The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The Philadelphia Eagles need more from Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast.
Let's get into some Birds talk, and I want to talk about Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore. And I think everybody knows, it's obvious that the performance on Sunday was simply not good enough when it comes to winning a championship, right? I think it was good enough to beat the Green Bay Packers on Sunday because of how elite the run game was, how elite the defense was, and that's going to continue. I'm not going to say the passing game needs to be substantially better for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't think they need to be this elite juggernaut that they were in 2022 for what would be the next 3-game run in the playoffs to hoist Lombardi yet again. But can the Eagles win a title the way they played Green Bay week after week? No. The passing game does have to be better than that. Does it have to be much better? Again, no. This team has the best defense and run game in football right now. And that's not an understatement or an overstatement. They should carry you the majority of the way. They're going to beat the Rams this Sunday primarily off the backs of their run game and their defense, just like they did when they played Los Angeles in LA earlier this year. I truly believe, honestly, that some people just don't want to win this way, and that's why they say the Eagles cannot win a Super Bowl without passing the football. Like, I think there needs to be a certain floor that you have to get to as a passing offense, and normally, year after year, you have to have a certain standard of passing to be a consistent contender. But for this year's Eagles team, as I've said on the episodes all year, you have to do what's best for this year's football team, and that is let the run game and the defense carry you because, again, they are the number one defense in football right now, and they're the number one run game. So those two things can win you a championship. They can get you at least to the Final Four. But I will say, and I love, again, that Hurts and the coaching staff have recognized that, what this team does best, and they don't want to get in the way of that. They don't want to hurt them by turning the football over, by being too aggressive, but they have to be better than what they were Sunday. That was far too conservative of a game plan from a passing perspective on Jalen Hurts' end and Kellen Moore's, and it was far too inefficient. The third and long play calling, I mean, there's 3rd and 12s. They're calling up quarterback draws and just direct runs to Saquon Barkley. I don't think Jalen Hurts handled pressure all that well. They didn't complete a pass for 5 straight drives. The Eagles had 2 interceptions in the second quarter that the Eagles offense turned into 0 points. Like, you can't have that. There will be times, and again, I'm not saying the passing game is going to have to carry you in the playoffs. They will not. But there will be some times, maybe against Matt Stafford next week, maybe against the Detroit Lions. Certainly, if the Lions make it to the Final Four in the conference championship, there will be times against the Lions, against Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen in the Super Bowl, where Jalen Hurts needs to be special, or where Jalen Hurts in the passing game needs to be at least more aggressive than what they were against the Packers to put teams away better. Again, the Eagles, they played with their food against Green Bay. There were multiple drives where the Packers made it a 1-score game in the second half. And if the Eagles' passing game, I felt like sometimes in that game could have went for the jugular and they pulled that off, this game would have been out of reach a lot earlier. So, no, I don't think suddenly they need to completely change their philosophy. The passing game needs to look elite for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl because they have a special combination of elite physical defense. All 3 levels of the defense are playing, it looks like, historically good right now. And they have the best run game I have ever seen in the NFL. One of the best run games the NFL has ever seen in its 100-plus years of existence. So the passing game needs to be better than it was Sunday. Needs to be more aggressive at times. There will be times against better teams as the playoffs go on that, no, you can't have 125 yards through the air. You can't go 5 straight drives where the passing game looks that lackluster. But I also don't think, I think some of the national narratives that are being created this week about it are going too far. I think the Eagles are so talented across the board that no, Jalen Hurts does not need to be the 2022, even the first half of 2023 quarterback, the majority of the run for them to continue this run. Again, there will be times he has to, but at the same time, I like that this Eagles team recognizes their strengths, who they are right now, and they're leaning into it. And their run game and defense have been absolutely incredible, and I think that's what's going to carry them against the Rams on Sunday. And by the way, too, I really think the other thing is I'm not concerned that next week, maybe in the NFC Championship, maybe in the Super Bowl, that when those situations arise, that the passing game needs to be better, that Jalen Hurts needs to be special, I'm not concerned that he can't do it. Because, and even look in that game against the Packers, the 2 clutch drives in the second half when Green Bay made it a 1-score game, those 2 drives made me optimistic, where Jalen Hurts goes 3 for 3, 61 yards, the passing touchdown to Dallas Goedert, where he called the audible to go back up 2 scores. Then the next drive after Green Bay scores again, he goes 3 for 4. He gets them down the field. Jake Elliott kicks a field goal. They go back up 9. So even in these games where Hurts struggles a lot of the time as a passer, still in those gotta have it moments, he does perform at his best. And that's why I'm optimistic. And we've seen him do that this year a lot, where even the games he doesn't light up the box score as a passer, he still steps up when it matters most. And I think he will do that if he has to against the Rams, against the Lions, against the Chiefs, or whoever they would play in the Super Bowl. Is he going to do that all of the time if he doesn't have to? No. He's going to let Saquon and the defense carry them. He has understood that's his role this year. The coaching staff has told him to play more conservative this year. It's why I think he's not pulling the trigger at times when maybe there's a 30-yard play to be had. Instead, he takes the 10-yarder. Like, I think mentality-wise, the Eagles are coaching him to be that kind of player this year, and he's embracing it. But when he needs to be Superman, when he needs to be Batman and not Robin, I think he'll knock the rust off next week and move forward, and he'll be able to do that if his number's called. But he needs help too. Like Kellen Moore, the routes that were designed on Sunday, it has to be better. Those routes felt lazy. They felt predictable. Green Bay was all over it. There was no creativity at all. There simply was not a lot of separation. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts was rusty on Sunday. I don't think he handled pressure all that well. But at the same time, a lot of that performance was also on Kellen Moore. He was not helping his guys get open. He was not making it easy on Jalen. So they need to be better for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. Absolutely. Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore. But do they have to be substantially better moving forward? No. They need to be timely and clutch. But this defense and run game, after rewatching that game, it is so good that I truly believe this year, in this year's version of the NFL, if that's carrying you the rest of the way, yeah, this team can still win a championship.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
What this team needs to carry on forward into the postseason.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a critical 3rd and 6 play on the game-winning drive, De'Ami Brown makes a clutch 21-yard catch to set the Commanders up for a playoff victory. We're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Commanders. And if you want to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, sign up to be a Locked On Commanders insider today. And from there, you will get live texts from practices, games, press conferences, all kinds of other times. All you have to do to be an insider is go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. It's free for the first 2 weeks. And not only are you going to get that, you're also going to get access to send me your text. You can send me your questions, your thoughts, your analysis, your opinions. We can have conversations. Agreeing is not a prerequisite to be an insider. Certainly can have a nice professional, if you want to call it that, or a cordial conversation about disagreeing points of view. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Our second sustain from the wild card round is going to be a play, and that play is the 3rd and 6 pass from Jane Daniels to De'Ami Brown for a gain of 21 yards on the eventual game-winning drive. So the Commanders came out for this play. They were bunched left in shotgun with De'Ami Brown, the outside receiver, in that bunch set to the left. Jamison Crowder was the inside receiver, middle skill position player. Tight end Zach Ertz was lined up, stood up on the end, off the end, I should say, of the line of scrimmage nearest to the offensive line. Eckler lined up to the right of Jane Daniels in shotgun as a running back, and Terry McLaurin, the receiver, split wide right facing press coverage from Buccaneers cornerback Zion McCollum. That was the formation. The Bucs come out with a too high look. Middle of the field is open. 6 men in the box, just one defensive back at the line of scrimmage on the bunch side of the formation in a zone look alignment. Now at the snap, or as the snap becomes more imminent, I should say, the Buccaneers crawl up a little bit. Some of those defenders come up on the line of scrimmage, and at the snap, there are actually 7 Buccaneers defenders within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. 6 of those guys are smack dab on the line of scrimmage. They only rush 3. The 2 safeties drop super deep, but the linebackers don't really move out of the box. They pretty much are shadowing, trying to contain Jane Daniels, kind of a group effort spy type of thing, if that makes sense. They don't really fan out, meaning that when De'Ami Brown runs his deep dig route underneath Jamison Crowder's deeper post route, Jane Daniels has plenty of room to make the throw without an underneath defender in sight. Both safeties too deep to do anything about it. That's exactly what happens. Brown then looks the ball in. Very important. Before turning upfield, getting into Bucs territory with 3 minutes left in the game. Got down to the Tampa Bay 45, 3 minutes left on the clock. And now you just set the stage for Washington to drain the clock, force Tampa Bay to use its timeouts, set up a game-winning field goal that came with just seconds remaining to send the Washington Commanders to the divisional round of the playoffs. The play design, simply put, one of Cliff Kingsbury's more brilliant play designs. Pre-snap formation forces the defense to identify zone or man, because when they're in zone and a bunch look like that, it's all condensed in, it's all really tight. There's not a whole lot of conversation because pretty much guys know, okay, this is my zone, this is your zone, we're going to drop in, things like that. There might be some communication of like, hey, watch for this, watch for that. But when you're in man, there's a lot more conversation, there's a lot more shifting. Honestly, there's a lot more almost anxiety coming from the defense because they know, well, you got that bunch look, you got crossers, you could have guys going one way, another way, pick plays, all kinds of stuff could be on, so they got to kind of ramps up the tension a little bit. So when you see those defenders come out and just kind of get into their space, not really communicating a lot, it kind of gives you a really good sign that the defense is going to be in zone. So that kind of gives Jane Daniels information that he doesn't need to use motion to get. Now, it also, this formation provides Jane Daniels with multiple options. So from what I can see, in case of the blitz, Ertz is running a short route. So if he's got to use a hot, he's got Zach Ertz hot, and then Zach Ertz just has to get upfield and try to convert that third down. A little bit harder to do than we're saying it, but that's something that's an option. A blitz side, if they do that. Now, if they go front side on the play and blitz, then he can scramble out of it, stress the linebacker into either giving up yards on the ground or uncovering Zach Ertz, in which case Jaden can look to complete a pass to his tight end. If the linebackers vacate the box and drop back or fan out, then Daniels has a little bit more room to maybe do something with his legs if he can't find a receiver. If the safeties don't bail and get deep, well, then the deeper route to Jamison Crowder potentially comes available, while dialing it up against zone means that Brown has the flexibility to flatten that route out a little bit as much as possible based on what the coverage is doing, which is exactly what he does. He gets really flat. It's not a dig in the traditional sense. Like he doesn't like come settled, chop his feet, all those things. More of a speed in, I suppose. Speed out is more what you hear about, more kind of a speed in, if you want to call it that. But he flattens it out really well, creates some separation from the defensive back, and is able to come open for his quarterback. Just perfect play design, great play design, perfect execution, especially by De'Ami Brown. Gets the ball, looks it in, is able to get the first down and get into Buccaneers territory. From a team perspective, we want to sustain the penalty reduction that we saw on Sunday night. Only 5 penalties total on the Washington Commanders in the wild card round, just 2 of them on the offense. You had a false start on Zach Ertz and an illegal man downfield on Andrew Wiley. Obviously, you would love to eliminate all of those penalties, but having just 2 on the offense, you can live with that a little bit more than some of the other things that we've seen. 2 other penalties were declined in this game. They were both offside penalties, one on the defense, Dante Fowler Jr., one on special teams, Jeremy Reeves. That one on special teams, Jeremy Reeves, was the first penalty of the game, and it was declined after the Buccaneers made a field goal, something that Buccaneers fans are not very happy for. They would rather have seen Todd Bowles take the penalty, turn the 4th and 5 field goal, or 4th and 7 field goal into a 4th and 2, and then go for it the way that Dan Quinn likely would have. So that's our final sustained improvements in the penalty arena. Certainly, again, you'd rather have 0 than 5, but you'd rather have 5 than 11 or 12, right? 3 things we want to trash in week 18. Again, we're going to start with player. And again, I'm just going to give my my normal disclaimer. We're not saying to trash the player. We're saying to trash the player performance, i.e. we want the player to simply get better, because we're talking about rookie left tackle Brandon Coleman, the lowest graded offensive player according to PFF, with a 35.2 overall grade. And if you're not familiar with PFF's grading, 35.2 is very bad. 19.9 pass blocking grade, so that's even worse. And yeah, it was evident on the field, Brandon Coleman not having his greatest performance of the season, certainly looking like a little bit of a rookie in his first playoff game. Gave up 6 pressures on 44 pass blocking reps, 4 hurries, 2 hits on the quarterback. And honestly, it would have been a lot worse if Jaden Daniels wasn't Jaden Daniels. So not only do I want to see Brandon Coleman obviously get a little bit better, we know he can play better. He knows he can play better. I'm not worried about whether the ability is there, just has to actually show up. But also, the Detroit Lions blitz a lot. They're 5th most in the league this season in blitzes, so they may need to give him a little bit of help. We remember earlier in the season, they were giving a lot of chip blocks. They still give chip blocks, the Washington Commanders offense does, but they were giving it a lot more early in their season. I think it was time to go back to that a little bit against the Detroit Lions. So hopefully we'll see that. Stash the team, the rushing game. Still, offensive rushing game outside of Jaden Daniels, nearly non-existent. I say nearly because it wasn't totally non-existent, but this team's got to figure something out, man. Brian Robinson Jr., 1.6 yards per carry in the wild card round is a career low. His previous career low was 1.67 yards per carry. This is 1.6 yards clean. This is 1.67 yards carry last year, week 5 against Chicago Bears, when the Commanders got smacked by the Bears 40-20 in that home loss. They lost Jeremy Reeves to a torn ACL on the same night. So not a good night for the Washington Commanders, as you might remember if you are a Washington Commanders fan of at least 2 years now. Austin Eckler did have a 3.4 yards per carry average. It's not the 4 yards. 4 yards is kind of the floor to say he had a quote-unquote good game. But Austin Eckler, 3.4 yards per carry, certainly better than 1.6 yards, right? More than twice as good. Chris Rodriguez, inactive in the wild card round, has shown the ability to be effective. Robinson's longest carry of the game was 5 yards. He had 7 carries that went for 2 yards or less, and multiple of those 7 carries were for losses. Also contributed with 4 catches for 22 yards. So B-Rob's overall offensive contributions, not great, but not terrible either. It's a season high in receptions for him, but the running game with Brian Robinson simply is not working anymore. B-Rob looks tentative. He looks unsure of himself. There's actually a stretch there where he looked more sure of himself. It kind of looked like that old B-Rob who got the ball, found a spot, put a foot in dirt and go for it. And then sometimes he's just kind of danced. He's kind of hesitant. Doesn't look like he's got a lot of confidence back there. Again, I don't know if it's injury related, if that right leg maybe is just kind of bothering him more than we know. I don't know if it's losing trust in the hole's going to be there in the offensive line. I don't know what it is exactly, but whatever it is, man, if you're going to continue to feature Brian Robinson, which, again, I still think in a vacuum, he's the best running back they have. They got to figure this out, or you got to go to featuring Austin Eckler, making Chris Rodriguez active, all these things. Whatever it is, they got to get that figured out because they're going to need it. You know what I mean? Just bluntly. We keep saying this, but I'll be honest with you, man. They keep winning with Jaden Daniels being their leading rusher. So I don't know. Maybe they don't need it, but you certainly would like to have it if you don't need it, right? Finally, the last play, or the play that we want to get rid of, isn't really a play on the Washington Commanders so much as it is just the way the pass interferences were called in this game. Fortunately, it didn't derail the game completely, but there was certainly a stretch there. It's not team controlled, it's official controlled. But first, down 10-3, Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans clearly extends his arm and pushes Marshawn Lattimore off on an inside dig route. Marshawn was in his hip pocket running the route for him. Absolutely would have been in position to get an arm into the cradle, potentially knock that ball away. Instead, Mike Evans pushes him off, gains 20 yards. On the very next play, Mike Evans then pulls Marshawn Lattimore into his body and draws a defensive pass interference from the same official that Marshawn Lattimore started yelling at after he didn't get the push-off flag. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's petty and unprofessional and BS. I don't know. You be the judge. Mike Evans, look, he's a Hall of Famer. He is, okay? And I love Mike Evans. I love his game. Love his talent. The dude is really good too. But he is known to push off, man. It is a part of his reputation. Everybody knows it. The officials know it. They know to look for it. It came. They didn't flag it, and then they gave him a cheap DPI on the very next play. It puts the Buccaneers at the 1 yard line. They eventually get a touchdown there. It's a big situation, and then again, you're punishing Marshawn Lattimore for being frustrated.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Impossible, right? Well, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $3 smackaroos in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The Rams crushed the Vikings, but aren't getting any respect as they head into the matchup with the Eagles. I tell you, FanDuel has Philly favored by 6.5 points. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Step closer to a Saturday game against the Texans for the next round of the playoffs for the Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
I think the best news that Andy could have given everybody honestly, I put it on social media, maybe the best impactful news of the day across the NFL. Every single Kansas City Chief practiced today. It doesn't matter whether it's full or whether it's pseudo or whatever. Everybody practiced. There are very few teams in this league that can say that at this time of year, Matt. How does that look? And are you encouraged by this, or I'm just making too much out of it?
No, I don't think you're making too much out of it at all, because I mean it tells you that the Chiefs' plan worked, that their decision to rest as many guys as they could in Week 18, and after they secured the bye week, that time off meant that everybody could be available. And we're still waiting to see who was probable, who was partial, who was limited, if anybody was, and it may have been everybody was full. And if that's the case, and even if you got a few names on the list, it's pretty good shape, because no other team is going to have a report like that, especially the teams that were just coming out of the plan this weekend. So, yeah, Chiefs' plan worked. And if that means that you've got Chris Jones at 100%, Travis Kelce at 100%, you're exactly where the Chiefs wanted to be right now.
This is when a plan comes together, A-Team fans. And Chris Jones in particular is the first person that I want to talk about, because there's a lot of hubbub about him not playing, etc., taking it easy, coming out. It's a calf strain. Yes, it's not the end of the world, but you do want to make sure that you're able to fire off. And I thought it was smart. They only rested 33 players last week, so I think that was great. That's an exaggeration, folks. But it did feel like there was a lot of guys getting the rest that they needed. For Chris Jones in particular, I think that pays off in what is not just hopefully a rejuvenated calf, but a guy that feels rested and is raring to go again, because we know Chris can turn it up. Is there anything that you see from warm-ups or anything else that makes you think that there's anything lingering for Chris?
Certainly didn't seem like it. I mean, as I was able to shoot some video that you can find on my X account, and and hey, all we got to see is him stretching and jogging, so we're not seeing a ton. But certainly didn't look like a guy that was in discomfort. If he's a full participant, that's telling us that he's probably not getting a whole lot of treatment either. Got to see him in the locker room, and he's talking on the podium on Wednesday, so didn't get a chance to talk to him on Tuesday. But no, I mean, Chris looks like a guy's ready to go. And last week, had the Chiefs played a game, had they played into wild card round, Chris would have played. So he's ready to go. But that extra week of rest, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, that was important to just get him closer to to 100%. And I mean, hey, is anybody 100% this time of year? Probably not. But is Chris at his best possible, especially coming off a calf strain? I mean, it certainly looks like. And we'll see what Chris has to say on Wednesday. But my expectation is that he's going to say the injuries, man, that's nothing. It's behind him.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see it. It also looks like Juwan Taylor practiced. DJ Humphries practiced, obviously. That comes to the biggest question of what we expect to see. And Andy played it, I think, pretty close to the vest. But I still feel like as we go into this playoff game, put people where they're most effective is my thought. Joe Thuney's been great when he's had to play left tackle, but he's a better left guard. I think we all know that. The question is DJ ready to go? I know some people have expressed some concern about maybe he's still not 100%, maybe favoring a little bit. I went back and watched, and I do see a twinge from here or there, but it doesn't look systemic to me, and it doesn't look like it's something I need to be concerned about this week. I think they should start DJ out at left tackle and let Joe play his guard spot. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I think on paper, that's the best Chiefs offensive line. I mean, on paper, DJ Humphries is the best left tackle. He's most suited for it, the most experienced, most physically built for it. Joe Thuney is an all-pro left guard. Just got named all-pro left guard. So you're better off with Joe Thuney as an all-pro left guard than a left tackle, because as good as Joe Thuney is, bless his heart, and great dude and all, he's not an all-pro left tackle. Now, DJ Humphries isn't right now either. But once again, it comes back to, what are you getting? I mean, are you better off with a replacement level left tackle and an all-pro left guard, or are you better with let's be real. I mean, Joe Thuney has been really good at left tackle, but he's not an all-pro. He's not a Pro Bowler. So let's say an average left tackle and an average left guard. That might be what you called Mike Caliendo. Mm-hmm. I mean, on paper, you're better off with DJ Humphries. I think that, for the Chiefs, I think it's going to come down to, though, what does Patrick Mahomes want? What makes him most comfortable? And if he's comfortable with DJ Humphries, I think they'll play DJ Humphries. If he's more comfortable with Joe Thuney, pretty good chance they'll go with Joe Thuney, because I know that in those last couple of games playing with Thuney, that Patrick Mahomes wasn't keeping his eyes on what was going on behind him. He wasn't, worrying about what was happening. He was keeping his eyes downfield. He was looking at everything pre-snap and worrying about his receivers more than he was worrying about the protection. And if that enables him to play with the efficiency that he had the last couple of games of the season and getting rid of the ball quickly, that's what you need. So if I'm Andy Reid and Andy Heck, I'm putting a lot of, Patrick Mahomes' voice into what he wants at that left tackle and making the decision. But, like you made the point. I mean, if you go with DJ Humphries and you start him and it doesn't work out, you can always move Joe Thuney over and bring Mike Caliendo in. Doesn't really make any sense to go the other way. I mean, you're not going to start Joe Thuney, and if he struggles, move him inside and bring DJ Humphries in. That's not really how it works. Anything works. So, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Joe Thuney starts, because, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But, I mean, like I said, on paper, the Chiefs' best offensive line is Humphries and Thuney.
It helps a lot if I remember what some guys look like, because they haven't been on a field in a while. And there are two critical, I think, case scenarios here of guys that could return to the roster for this ball game, maybe the next ball game, whatever. There's an open window right now. And I think the most intriguing to me is not the guy everybody wants to hear. We'll talk about him in a second. But is there room? Is there a reason to have McCole Hardman come back to the 53 at this point? Because I like what Nico Romeo has done in the return game. I'd like to see him on offense a little bit and bring his, what I feel is a much more nastier edge and a higher energy volume to this team than what we've seen from McCole. But McCole's got the experience. He scored in the Super Bowl. It's a back and forth. Where do you stand on it today?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because if, and the Chiefs have a roster spot open for somebody to come back from injured reserve this week, with putting Marlon Tuipulotu on injured reserve. They're down to 52 right now. So it could be McCole Hardman. It could be Jalen Watson. We'll see what happens. But, with bringing back McCole, there's a couple of things that happen. One, you now could have McCole and Nico back on kick returns rather than Nico and Samaje Perine. And I think that's an upgrade. If, nothing else, then, this kind of saves Samaje for, offense. I mean, he's a veteran after all. And I mean, he's not necessarily the most suited guy for kick returns. I mean, McCole is much more suited. So to me, putting McCole and Nico back there, you could even throw some wrinkles. I mean, the Chiefs have not been very creative or aggressive on kick returns this season. If you put McCole and Nico, you do open the box of tricks a little bit more. I mean, there could be some, potential with reverses and handoffs and, crossing the field. And that's, come to some kind of things they worked on at training camp that we haven't seen at all this year. So I think it opens it up a little bit. And McCole's a veteran. I mean, he knows every play in the book. So, he is that insurance that if anybody goes down during the playoffs, McCole can step into any role. And like you saw in the Super Bowl last year, even if it's 2 or 3 plays that you've got designed for McCole to take advantage of, he could always be useful. So I don't think that it's an either or with Nico or McCole. I think if McCole comes back, I think it's both of them, because I think this team is better with both those guys out there.
Okay, that's fair. Well, then there's another either or, though, because there's only one spot available. And the other one that everybody wants to know is Jalen Watson. Practice today. Again, full practice, everybody on the roster, folks. He's been making this progression. Came back earlier than I certainly expected, even me, and I was one of the last holding out hope for this to actually progress to this point. But at this point, with the stable of receivers you're going to play in this ballgame, you're going to see John Mechie, which you didn't see a whole lot of last time. You're going to see Hutchinson. Didn't see a whole lot of him last time. They are, without Tank Dell and his significant injury that happened the last time these two plays, they are not as strong at wide receiver as they were previously, in my opinion, in most opinions. Is it something that you feel you need to rush Jalen Watson back for right now? Is it better to hold him out? If he is close to returning, is it better for the championship game or even the Super Bowl if they get there? Or would you, if he's ready to go-ish, do you put him in now?
Yeah, the if is really the question on Jalen Watson. And, remember, I mean, when he went on injured reserve, the belief from the Chiefs was that this is a 12-week minimum injury. I mean, it wasn't just the fractured ankle. It was also a high ankle sprain. So, he required surgery on both of those items. Isaiah Pacheco had a very similar injury, didn't have the high ankle sprain that didn't require the surgery. So he only had the fractured fibula, fractured ankle that he had to deal with. He came back in 11 weeks. I'm still not convinced that Isaiah Pacheco's 100% coming back. So, what are you talking about with Jalen Watson, who had a more severe injury, right now is just getting to the 12-week point that maybe he could come back. And Andy Reid, I mean, I know that I've seen a lot of people taking his comments on Tuesday both directions. It's either, Jalen Watson's playing on Saturday or it's more tempered. And I think it's definitely more tempered because a couple of the things that he mentioned was, they still have to see him take a hit. Hasn't done that. And that'll be a key, Reid mentioned really watching what happens this week in practice. And Wednesday's practice, which will likely be in pads and a full go practice, will be a huge test. And then it becomes the question of how much is Jalen Watson? Because Reid mentioned that he's not ready to play a full game. So you're only going to get a certain, he's going to be on a pitch count, be a limited number of snaps. So, the question is what percentage is Jalen Watson back and how much work can he give you? Can he take a hit? All of those questions. And, here would be my, counterpoint to anybody who says that, hey, the Chiefs were struggling against the Texans and their passing attack last time around and they didn't have Jalen Watson. So having him back would be important. Well, I also say that this Texans passing attack since they lost Tank Dell in Kansas City has not been the same. Wasn't the same in the second half after they lost him, hasn't been the same since then. You look at those 32 points that they put up on the Chargers on Saturday, 20 of them essentially came from the offense because the defense did the rest of the work. So I don't know that you have to have Jalen Watson back this week. And if holding him back means it's more likely that you've got him for an AFC Championship game and a Super Bowl closer to 100%, that would probably be the way to go.